I was wondering, what is the benefit of buying a $5 card, having it graded for $20, then only being able to sell it for $25? I submitted my cards to PSA on December 5th. They're saying the ETA is 3/15, 3-month turnaround time. How can I time cards in sports with these outrageous turnaround times? So I just bump it. One, bump it sooner, and two, buy more expensive cards. Welcome to episode number 40 of Beyond the Game. And in this podcast, I'm going to be going over some cards that I think are amazing buys, some that I think are not so good. I have a bunch of questions to answer here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Eric Michael. I've sold millions of dollars in sports cards. I make this content to get people into the world of buying and selling sports cards because, yes, I do have a program to sell you. You could buy it. You don't have to buy it. But I do this stuff for free just to help everybody out and get people into the world because it's changed my life. I know it could change a lot of people's lives as well. But let's get into it. So we have a bunch of questions here. I have on my computer screen to the right. And if my voice sounds a little bit funny, I had the flu last week, and it was absolutely terrible. It was like actually the first week I didn't work for a week in like 4 years. Actually, it feels kind of nice now. Like I feel a little bit more energized, a little bit more focused because I've been just pushing myself so hard for so long. But let's get into it because you guys don't care about that. Greg asks, other than eBay, what is the best platforms to sell and get max exposure? Bad question. Because if you're buying like the right stuff at the right time, so if you're buying, if you bought Bobby Witt Bowman Chrome cards 2 months ago, and you go and sell them in February and March, right before the season, it doesn't really matter where you go to sell them, you're gonna sell them. So the platforms, there's no like one that's like way better than the other, where there's like these magical people that are going to give you 5 times more money. It's like people have that false, like I'm going to give you the answer in my opinion, but people have this false illusion, like where's the best place to buy? Where's the best place to sell? Like the best place to buy, that place I like the most is eBay, but I have students that make $5,000 a month that only buy on Facebook. So it's just a preference. Like there's no magical place like the Willy Wonka factory where you can just go and find cards for 50% off or sell them for 50% more than they're worth. It just doesn't happen, okay? But anyways, to answer your question straightforwardly, number one to me, the best place to sell is Facebook because you could build connections. Facebook groups are amazing. It's like all sports card people in one area. The number 2 after that, to me, is card shows. I do really well at card shows. Number 3 after that, it gets kind of wonky here, but would probably be Instagram. I don't use Instagram much, to be honest, but it is pretty good. I prefer to use Facebook. And then number 4 would be good old eBay. I try to avoid eBay to avoid fees. Like the amazing thing about this, and this, right? Number 1, there's no fees, right? When you do a deal with someone off Facebook and they pay you through, let's say, PayPal, the most amount of a fee you're going to incur is about 3%, as opposed to eBay is going to be about 13%, right? And also, more importantly, you build connections, all right? You see me talk about this 800 million times, and I will continue to talk about it because it is very important. Bang, bang, and bang, build connections, right? You actually meet people. You can get someone's phone number. You could do that with eBay, but it's a little bit harder, right? Because they want you to stay on their platform, so they restrict you from sharing personal information. So those are the top 4 in my mind, because these are the top 4 in order of how well I've done selling in certain places. Like I do everything in my power to avoid selling on eBay because of the fees, and you don't build connections. The only time I'm selling on eBay is to like mass sell a bunch of cards before the season. I'll send them to like a consignment guy or something like that. A bunch of cards I'm probably not going to make money on, break even, maybe lose a little bit of money. A bunch of cards I bought that didn't grade, that I still have, that maybe I can make 5 to 10% on. So that's, in my opinion, the best place to sell sports cards. Hopefully that answers your question, Greg. Ryan says, Eric, I was wondering, what is the benefit of buying a $5 card, having it graded for $20, then only being able to sell it for $25? It's a rhetorical question, so what do we have to do to find raw cards that are undervalued and get a good price on them early? So, well, the first part, why does someone buy a card for $5, get it graded for $20, and it's only worth $20 or $25? You're asking me that. You're preaching to the choir. I have no idea. Like, people sometimes just have no idea what they're doing. I mean, even me, like, I have students, like, I will tell students, hey, we want to try to at least double our money on a card. And once in a while, I'll have students go array and still buy cards where a PSA 10's 130 and raw sells for 100. Why it's like that, I don't know, but you can't make any money on it, so why do it? People will just blindly buy things to buy things. It's America. That's the best answer I got for you. And what do we have to do to find raw cards that are undervalued and get a good price in them early? So it's not really like getting a good price in them early. That's not going to happen. So, like, for example, if we go here, so let's look up 2024 Prism Jaden Daniels. This guy just stabbed me in the heart yesterday. I was at the Bucks game, and man, I've sucked sports gambling this year. I've been terrible. Just like, I always do well. This year's just been brutal. Just, oh man, just angers me. I've lost so much money. It's been disgusting. But anyways, so Jaden Daniels Prism card. So I'm going to tell you what not to do. So, right, this card came out. You can see it came out. It was selling for like $550. Then it drops down, and now it's worth like $350. This card will not stay here and will probably settle down at like $250 to $275. So do not buy these raw cards early, because as you can see, they always go down. Like, someone who's probably went down more than Jaden Daniels, because Jaden Daniels is still in the playoffs. Let's look at Caleb Williams. I'm not sure. So, but I could tell you it probably has went down. So yeah, you can see this is a good one, right? This card was $250, then sold for $400, then beep, shoots down, and now it's worth like $160, right? So if you buy it here, you're gonna spend $200-$300, and it's just gonna go down in value to like $150, $160. And this card should settle down at like low hundreds, if I had to guess, like $120, $130. But you could go in and buy it now. Like, this card as a PSA 10 is gonna be like, well, these cards are really hard to grade, so you're gonna want to. I don't know if you're gonna want to buy these specific cards, but you want to not buy it early, all right? But how to get good prices on raw cards? So it just all comes down to timing, right? That's all. That's like half of what I talk about, right? So like timing. So like, let's take football, right? Football is a good example. So that card of Caleb Williams, right? Let's use that as an example. So Caleb Williams, silver prism, right? Right now, while we're speaking, today, while I'm speaking, January, this card is probably worth like $160 to $180, like we just discovered. And then what's going to happen as we hit the dead of the offseason, probably at some point between February and March, well, this card's going to go down to like $120 to $130 if I had to imagine. And then when something good happens to Caleb Williams, they draft a receiver, or people just get excited that he looks good in training camp, whatever. At some point, I can't tell you when, but at some point between April and August, because April's the draft, so a lot of crazy stuff happens, this card will probably shoot back up to $160 to $180. This is usually what happens, especially with newer cards, right? Starts out hot, off-season happens, goes down, and then people get excited or something good happens in the offseason. It's offseason, it goes back up. So the point I'm trying to make here is you want to buy here. You want to buy raw cards cheap? Buy it here. Because what you'll do, let's say, you buy, let's use a different color here, right? Let's say you buy this card February 1st and you spend $120 on it, right? And let's say while you buy this card, a PSA 10 is, let's pretend, $300, right? So when you bought this card for $120, a PSA 10 was selling for $300. But let's say you buy this card in February it comes back. You have these football cards coming back to you in like April, May, August, and let's say you have a bunch of cards coming back to you, and it's like June, and everyone loves Caleb Williams, and the coach is saying he looks amazing in training camp, yada yada yada. Now, this in June, this raw card that was once 120 is now 160, which means the PSA 10, guess what? That also jumps up too. That's going to be like 380, right? So because you time the market well, when you get these cards back, it's hard to lose money because they've appreciated in value. So that is how you buy raw cards cheaper. Hopefully that answers your question, Ryan. Rick. Hi, Eric. I purchased your course last year, but I have not had time to dive into it. Is it too late? If not, what is the best way to get started? So the best way to get started is to start to watch all the videos, Rick, and attend the coaching calls. That would be the simplest way to get started. The course is very step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So just watch the videos in order and start to attend the coaching calls. It'll fall into place. Mark says, hi, Eric. Love the content. I'm based in the UK and started out in flipping sports cards. It's not as big here yet. Yeah, Rick, I'm doing my best to get it bigger over there. Eventually we're gonna start running ads over there. I know you probably don't see my ads, but we run a lot of ads to get people into our program. But anyways, you're asking, how do I maximize my sales by appealing to US-based buyers? Well, by not buying soccer, because we don't care, or as you call it, football, we don't care as much about it. The market's just not as big. You're kind of asking the wrong question. The right question you should be asking is, what are the right cards to buy? Because if you have, like this example I was just going over, right, of Caleb Williams, right? If you have a card of Caleb Williams here, and someone wants to buy it, and it's priced right, and you're selling the right card at the right time, nobody cares that you're in the UK. It just doesn't matter. You just have to get familiar with US-based sports. So, like, if you're in the UK, the best sport in terms of, like, these cards are the most liquid, most amount of cards to make money on, would be football. This is American football, by the way. Here, I'll put this just in case you're watching this. American football. This is the easiest to make money on. Next would be baseball. After that would be basketball. And right there where basketball is hockey. And then after that, it's kind of like F1, soccer, UFC. UFC is probably a step down from F1 and soccer, but you get the point. So you have to familiarize yourself with football cards. And the best way to do that, honestly, I don't know how much you know about football, but there's a position called the quarterback that is the premium position in the sport. And you want to be buying cards that are newer because newer cards are easier to grade. So some names, to name drop you here, right? Caleb Williams. That's a name. Caleb Williams. Jaden. These are all guys who are going to be really good purchases. Jaden, says Daniels. Bo Nix. These are all cards that are really going to appeal to US-based buyers. I'm missing a few here. Drake. May. Michael. Penix. I'm missing one. Quarterback. I can't think of it. I think there's one more, but I can't think of it. But yeah, these guys are going to appeal to US-based buyers, and it's a great time. Maybe not yet. Maybe give it a few more weeks. But these cards are going to be low in value because it's the off season of American football, and then you buy them, you get them graded, and they appreciate in value while they're grading is essentially the way to make money. But yeah, these are going to be like some simple guys for you. Mark. So hopefully that answers your question. Brian asks, how difficult is it to find cards that can be graded as a PSA 10? It's just a matter of skill. I mean, there's not that difficult. So if you, right, this is just a pretend example. This is just a pretend math example I'm making up here, right? Let's say, right, you have 1 million cards on eBay. I don't know, there's probably more, but 1 million cards on eBay, right? And let's say 500K of them are graded already. 500K of them are raw. So out of these 500,000 raw cards, I would say anywhere between, if you just sent in all these raw cards, 100K of them are PSA 10 worthy. Once again, this is made up math here. 100K of them are PSA 10 worthy. Now, out of that 100K, not all of them are worth, though this 100K means these cards will grade a PSA 10, but not all cards are worthy of grading a PSA 10, of sending into PSA, right? You want to make sure it's the right time, it's the right type of card, you're going to be able to sell it, you're going to at least double your money. So out of this 100K, I would say like 50K of it worthy of buying. This is like simple math. Like this is just like a guess. So this number right here, this is the key. So to find these cards easier, it's just a matter of skill. Like it's no different than shooting a free throw. But they're littered all over the place on eBay. I mean, take my word for it. It's how I paid for my college, and it's what I do full time. So they're all over the place, and a lot of people don't even want to send cards in for grading. They don't want to deal with the hassle. They just want to get quicker cash, and keep breaking, or some people just flip raw cards to make money. Elias says, with Prism being hard to grade this year, what other football sets should I target to grade? So the ones that are the best to grade, in my opinion, for football, so Prism's always going to be number one. And then I'll go into what you just said in a second. And then number two is probably Optic. Then number three, it's usually hard to grade, but Contenders or Optic, Contenders. And then number four, probably Donruss. So these are some good ones. I mean, you could go after Optic right here. Optic is going to be pretty good. I mean, it's usually super, super liquid. But the fact that Prism's harder to grade, it's just give and take. So, the easier a card is to grade, usually the lower amount of money you're going to make on it. The harder it is to grade, the more money you're going to make on it because it's a harder card to grade. So, for example, because going back to what I was talking about before, a silver Prism Caleb Williams, for example. Well, this card right now is raw is 150. And I would imagine, because these cards are hard to grade, probably, let's say, 20% of them are going to PSA 10. So what that means, because it's pretty damn hard to grade, I wouldn't be surprised if a PSA 10 of this card ends up being worth about $600. However, if you use that example again, let's say this card raw 150, but let's say these cards are a little bit easier to grade, and let's say 40% of them are going to PSA 10. Well, 40% of them are going to PSA 10. That means that as a PSA 10, it might only sell for $450, right? Harder it is to grade, more money you're going to make. So also, with this said, PSA 9s usually in this, this is the situation that we're actually living in because the cards are going to be hard to grade. Because they're harder to grade, a PSA 9, you're probably not going to lose money on it. So even though if you know what you're doing, you'll be able to get 40 to 50% of the ones that you send in for grading because you'll be able to evaluate the condition. But because they're harder to grade, I wouldn't use that as a deterrent to not buy them. because now it's an opportunity to make more money. So if you buy, once again, let's go back to the same example, the Caleb Williams, right? If you buy 10 Caleb silvers, right? And so that means you spend, let's say, $1,500 on all of them, right? And grading cost, it's going to run you, let's say it's $20 a card. So let's say it's $200. And let's say 3 grade a 10. So 3 get a PSA 10. And then 7 get a PSA 9. Well, the PSA 10s, after grading cost $20, $150, you'll probably profit about probably like $350 per. So on these 3 PSA 10s, so if we do the math here, all right, 3 times 350, that equals a $10.50 profit on these 10s, and the 9s, you should be able to at least break even because these cards are so hard to grade. So it's just give and take. It's just, you put in more volume, you're going to make still good money, just in a different way. But what if you're able to get 6 of these cards to get a PSA 10 or 5 of them? You're going to make substantially more money. So I wouldn't use that as a deterrent to not buy it. But if you don't know what you're doing, then I wouldn't buy it, because then it's not going to make money, because they're all going to grade at 9. Hopefully that answers you. But good question, Elias. All right, this is a little long one. I'm going to speed through this question. I have thousands of raw cards to sell on eBay: football, basketball, baseball. Nothing extraordinary. My experience is that most of these auctions sell at 99 cents or maybe $1 or $2. I'm lucky to just make pennies on the dollar after eBay. There's a few times I lost money with shipping. So I have recently just started to send cards to PSA for grading. Honestly, can't afford to send more than a couple and wait to get them back is insane. So I guess my question is, what the hell am I doing? How do I determine what cards to send out for grading other than the obvious ones? I have a handful of iconic Ken Griffey Jr. cards from the 80s, among other Hall of Fame players. Okay, I got the question. So, Brandon, you have a bunch of old cards. Unfortunately, those cards that you think are iconic of Ken Griffey, I can promise you they're not. So, and then you can't afford to send in more than a few cards for grading. So, if that's the case, if you can't afford to send in more than a few cards for grading at the same time, I would not be watching me right now. And I would get another, and I think you said it's the slow season for your job. I think that's what you said. Get another job. Pile up more money, because if you don't have an extra at least few $1,000s in expendable cash to mess around with, you need a change in your life. There's more than enough money out there. There's more than enough jobs out there. Do not buy cards. It's not going to be your saving grace. Sports cards is not going to take you from broke to rich. Sports cards, for the most part, is like a cool way to make like $3, $4, $5 a month extra, but you need $4 or $5 in expendable cash. So if I was in your shoes, and I'm no financial analyst or expert over here, Brandon, but I would just simply not be buying cards. It's not going to save you. If it's fun, if it's your fun, sure, but it sounds like you're here to make money, as I imagine most people are, and you have other problems in your life that need fixing. Go get another job during your slow season. Make some extra cash. Stop spending so much money on going out to food or your expensive car, wherever the money's going, and then come back to me with the question. That's what I would do. Nathan says, I have numerous sports cards that I've owned for years, now wanting to sell them. There are a few that I want graded. Do you recommend sending them to PSA or another grader? They also insure them for value that could be costly. Please let me know. I appreciate it. So the only cards, it depends what they are. If you have vintage cards and you want to get them back quicker, safer, because PSA is a nightmare sometimes, you could send them to SGC. SGC does basically just as well as PSA with vintage. So take that how you want. But if they're modern cards, there's really just no better place to send them to PSA. I wish there was, especially in your case, because you've had these cards for years, so you just want to get them back and had them worth the most amount of money. Like, there's a case to say that you could send modern cards to SGC even though they sell for like 30 to 40% less than PSA cards, because you get them back much faster, so you can turn them over faster if you're a little bit more broke and you don't have as much money. But there's just no better place to send than PSA. I wish there was a place that would compete with PSA, honestly, because it would force both companies to be better. And back in the day, Beckett used to do that, but like no place could compete with PSA and the values the cards bring. So send it to PSA. That's my answer. Dan says, what is the best new football cards to get and hold on to that will increase with value? Okay. Let's see. That's a good question. Well, so new football cards. So, okay, Dan. So let me explain to you just how new football cards work. I kind of went into this before. So this is a card of Caleb Williams. This is one of his new cards. So you cannot buy it while it's here when it first comes out in the first week or two, because it comes crashing down just like you see here. Just to use another example, just to go through, keep it fresh. I've been talking about Caleb Williams for a lot for some reason. Prism Bo Nix. Let's use Bo Nix. So you can see Bo Nix, same thing as Caleb Williams, right? This card is like $400 first few days, and bing, comes crashing down. And guess what? He just lost in the playoffs. So boop, it's gonna come crashing down a little bit harder. So this card that's like 240, 215, 213, it's gonna come down to like 150 to 170 if I had to imagine. So you should buy it once you see it come down and it stabilizes with a few sales, and then get these cards graded. Most of these cards, most of these new cards, because they're young prospects essentially, are not going to live up to the hype. So buying new cards to hold for the long term to increase the value, chances are whatever guy you buy, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, in a year from now, they're not going to be worth nearly what they are today. Just because most guys just don't perform up to expectations. It's just how it goes. Like, even guys like, take like Brock Purdy, for example. Actually, I haven't looked at his value in a while. But Brock Purdy, if we look at Mr. Brock here. So like Brock Purdy, if you go back a year ago, right, you would say to yourself, wow, there's just no way Brock Purdy's value is going to go down. The Niners are loaded. Well, it just does, because excitement dies, and maybe Brock Purdy could actually be a potentially good buy now. But like, look at this card. This card before the season was like around $800. This is his Silver Prism PSA 10. And then that's the big drop off. So if you can see, it fell in half, and now it's worth $400. Another example, right? If you go back like to July or August, you would say, wow, CJ Stroud, there's no way his value is going to go down. It's impossible. He's so good. And the Texans have Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon. Right? Everyone forgets that the CJ Stroud was like God's child, right? And then look what happens. This was like a year ago, or in August and July, and this card is worth almost $1,000. And then look what it's worth today. Same thing, almost similar to Brock Purdy. It happens all the time. Like, if there was a way to short these young guys, I would, because I'd make a lot of money. But there's no new cards to hold long-term for value. Most of them go down in value. That's how it goes. Eric says, I'm currently buying baseball cards and sending them for grading, but it takes a lot of time to get cards back at PSA. Does the peak selling period for baseball cards extend through spring training? Just want to make sure I have time to send my latest batch off to PSA and get them back in time. Eric, it sounds like you're in the program. Yeah, the bottom line is like, here's the simple rule. So with baseball, sell before April 1st. Do that, you're good. Don't do that, you're screwed. So that's it. The peak time, in my opinion, so baseball is a little funny because these younger prospects really, people will overreact and underreact and go crazy during spring training. It's a little bit different than other sports. Like football, people don't care about preseason as much. Basketball, they really don't give a shit at all about preseason. But baseball, they do, because these younger kids who have never played with these major league teams are now playing, and they're kind of like fighting to be on the opening day roster. So it plays a little different. But like the best time to sell, in my opinion, baseball is January to February, because what happens in March, there is volatility, right? I like to, if you haven't noticed by now, when I'm selling a card or buying a card, I prefer the player to not be playing at all. Because like I was just going back with this example of C.J. Stroud, most players just don't perform up to expectation, especially in baseball. Like, go back a year ago, like Jackson Holiday was like the man, right? Jackson Holiday. And baseball is like the worst. Like, these guys never, ever perform up to expectation. It's actually insane. But like, you can see this card at one point last year in spring training was like, his PSA 10 Bowman Chrome was like $1,400 in that range. And look what it's worth today. The last sale at $700 because he's just started to play. He stunk. He went like 1 for 30. This stuff happens all the time. They sent him back down, but then he came back up. But yeah, baseball, just, I'm telling you, man, just like pay attention to this number. Sell before April 1st. I'm telling you, guys just go down so fast in baseball. So Stu's actually about to ask a similar question. So Stu says, I submitted my cards to PSA on December 5th. They're saying the ETA is 3/15, so March 15th, 3-month turnaround time. How can I time cards and sports with these outrageous turnaround times? So just bump it. 1, bump it sooner, and 2, buy more expensive cards. So if PSA is going through one of these funny things where they're taking 3-4 months to buy cards or saying to get your cards back from you, you have 2 options, right? Option number 1 is start sooner. So, usually I stop sending cards in, baseball cards in by like January 15th. But if PSA is taking sooner or faster, or no, they're taking longer, start earlier. Start sending baseball cards in and just pile up in March or November and December, and then you'll be safe. Like, you're still going to be good. Like, you'll get them back March 15th, but just for football, keep that in mind and stop sending football cards in like May. And then that's option number 1. Option number 2 is more expensive cards. So like, if the average card you're buying, let's say it sounds like the average card you're probably buying, right? Average card value, you're probably spending on average like $100, if I had to guess, and you're using the $19 service to get these cards graded. Well, all you got to do is just bump up the average. So if you average card value, if you bump it up to $200 that you're buying, well, all of a sudden you can use the higher end grading service, which is going to cost you around $40, right? And now you're going to get these cards back sooner in this situation. So there you go. Just this is option 1. This is option 2. Pick which one you want to do. Sean says, and by the way, I apologize. There were a few questions I couldn't get to because I have like a list. We send out like a form, like an email, and there were just so many damn questions. I just wouldn't be able to get to all of them. But Sean says, do you have any top tips for selling on eBay? Same question for Facebook. I mean, yeah, there's just one general tip when it comes to selling cards to make your life easier. So like tip number 1, that's terrible. Sell at 90% of value. That's like the main best tip, because you're going to sell cards a lot faster and you're going to build connections, which is number 2. So get people's phone numbers. Do those things you'll do pretty well, and for these reasons, that's why I don't like to sell cards on eBay nearly as much, because you can't build these connections. Guess what? If you do this and you get people's phone numbers, and you'll get a lot of them because people want to do deals with you because you're selling cards at 90% of value, when you get cards back from grading, or even before you get them back from grading, you can just text people, hey, you want cards X, Y, and Z, and you can literally just have them sold in no time. People are just going to pay you through Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, whatever it might be. So those are the top two. I mean, you do those things. There's no like secret place to sell cards or a secret way to list cards. I wish there was, but there's not. I mean, do these two core principles, you'll do pretty well. And I think that is it for the questions. So, okay, I got 3 interesting things I put here to talk about. Number 1 is, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Jim Harbaugh, even though it's not good timing, they just lost to the Texans. It's pretty embarrassing. I lost a lot of money on that game. But Jim Harbaugh is the greatest coach of all time. Greatest football coach of all time. This guy took over Stanford. They had like 1 or 2 wins. Then they were in BCS bowl games. Okay? And then he goes to the Niners, who people thought Alex Smith was no good. The Niners were bad for a long time. NFC Championship right away. They should have beat the Giants, but that muff punt didn't do him any favors. And then leaves the Niners because he rubs people the wrong way, goes to Michigan, who's a failing program with that coach Rich Rodriguez, I believe. Michigan was no good for the longest time. National championship. Then he leaves Michigan, goes to the Niners, who played football totally backwards, defense terrible, didn't run the ball. Right away, starts running the ball, gets a great offensive line, drafts that kid Joe Alt, makes the playoffs right away. And they're probably going to, they're with no weapons, just the kid Lad McConkey. So give him another year, give Herbert some actual real weapons again, because they got rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And, they'll be right there with the Chiefs. Is that not the greatest coaching resume of all time? He just turns places around right away. There's just no one else that has done that. I think if I had to take one coach to start my franchise right now out of all the coaches in college, in pro, I would take Jim Harbaugh. I promise I would. I think that dude is incredible. Except that playoff game. That was not incredible. So that's number 1. Number 2, so there's a guy. Some of you guys are going to think I'm fucked up for what I'm about to say. But there's a guy who joined our program. And he's successful. He was making money. And his wife is divorcing him because of it. So this guy bought our lower end program, and he didn't want to tell his wife because he knew she would say no, there's just a bunch of problems. I'm not a relationship expert, but to me, that's a bunch of problems. And he got into the program, started doing well, and his wife found out about the charge and is divorcing him. I swear to God. There were probably other problems in the relationship. The partner that you choose in life is it is the most important decision you'll ever make. I know mostly men watch this. How can, I know. I'm probably wired different. How can you ever let your wife, why would it ever even be a question? Why do you even need to ask your wife, hey, honey, can I invest in myself to 1, give me something to do, and 2, make more money for this family? What wife would ever say no? I know the reason. A lot of times wives say no because they get jealous that their husband's doing something and not focusing on them. It's terrible, but I see it happen all the time. How could you ever, if that's what your wife is like, and you need to beg your wife to invest in yourself, to make yourself better and your family better, I'm sorry, get a divorce. Your wife is terrible. And I can't even imagine as a man having to ask your wife, can I use my own money to do something that's going to be good for us? Can someone explain that to me? I'm only 27. I've never been married, but I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, especially the ones that, I get it. I do get it a little bit, right? Sometimes you have shared bank accounts, but you have a shared bank account and there's no better way to spend your money than to invest it. Would you rather take the money and take your family out to dinner a bunch of times, or spend money on investing yourself so you can take your family out to dinner so you don't need to worry about the money it's going to cost you? And I'm like, I know it's fucked up. Someone's getting divorced because they joined my program, but good. I'm glad, because if that's what your wife needed to get a divorce, it's probably not the right girl anyways, and you should probably stay away from her, because I think I talk about this all the time. In the world of I've talked about this a lot with my buddy. So in the world of entrepreneurship, like owning a business, and I just think in life in general. So when it comes to dating and just like your partner, there's 3 things that in order that are the best, right? So like the best thing you could ever have, number 1 would be supportive partner. So this is the best thing you could ever have. And I would say this is probably, 10% of the time, if I had to guess. The second best thing you could do is just be single. And the worst thing, toxic partner. That would be the worst thing. And this, unfortunately, is probably 90% of the time. And when I say toxic partner, I mean someone that makes you feel guilty for working, someone that gets jealous and doesn't want you to invest in yourself. I don't understand how you could be with someone like that, but that's just me. But this is the thing I see fuck up so many men, and this is part of the reason it's easier to invest in yourself when you're younger, because you don't have some other voice in your ear. Because your toxic partner who knows nothing about entrepreneurship and knows nothing about money. Like, I've literally seen, this is crazy. I've seen instances where there's been, so like we have a sales team, obviously we sell people into the program, and there's been like, so people will be on a Zoom call, right? And like the man, usually it's men that join our program, right? So a man will be on the Zoom call, and this is a, guy in corporate America, high up, makes $250,000 a year, does very well for himself. His wife is stay at home, doesn't work, and his wife is like, no, that's a bad decision to invest in sports cards. Like, his wife, who hasn't worked for 20 years, is telling him that. And like, I'll look at these calls sometimes and I'll be like, so your wife, who probably knows nothing about money, is giving you financial advice. That's like you trying to give your wife advice on what's the best way to take care of the kids, right? She probably knows more than you because she's home with the kids 90% of the time. You're at work. And it's crazy that people like listen to people that are not where they want to be in life and that know nothing about finances. It's the example I always give about my parents. Love my parents to death, but I would never listen to them about financial advice. Why would I ever do that? Because they're not where I want to be. I want to listen to people that are where I want to be. Someone comment and let me know if I'm fucking nuts. And lastly, so this is interesting. So I was listening to Alex Hormozi, and because this is going to relate to me because I get this all the time. So Alex Hormozi but has like an acquisition company where he invests in companies and helps them grow. And he was helping these people with a medical practice, some sort of medical practice or something, and they were severely in debt. They had a few medical practices. They had 3 of them, I believe, and each one was $10,000 a month they were making in profit from each one. But they were like $250,000 in debt because it's very expensive to start these things up. So Alex Hormozi said to him, he was like, well, you know how to start a successful practice and make $10,000 a month. Don't keep opening up new ones because you're putting yourself further into debt. It's not a huge opportunity. It's not like these practices are making you 30, 50, 100 grand. Like, they kind of cap out at $10,000 a month. Teach people how to start one. And with no overhead, you could charge someone $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. And that's right into your pocket instead of all the expenses that you're incurring with these medical practices. And they did that. And they got out of debt. Actually, excuse me, this wasn't Alex Hormozi. This was Tanner Chittister. He's another like online coach. And someone commented, which I thought was interesting, which is like the fucked up belief that people have when it comes to coaching. Someone commented, like, so you taught people who weren't good at running medical practices how to teach people how to start and run a medical practice. And what I thought was so interesting, because I get this all the time, is because they're just different opportunities. So it's not like these people didn't know they knew how to start a successful medical practice, but they wanted something much bigger than $10,000 a month in profit, which the vehicle of owning a medical practice in this situation just couldn't get them there. So teaching people how to do it, that's a multi-million-dollar opportunity. And it goes back to me with sports cards. So like, why do I teach people how to make money with sports cards? Well, one, I enjoy doing it. And two, it's a much bigger and better monetary opportunity. Sports cards is, I've made 20, 30 grand a month, but it's really something to make 3, 4, 5 grand a month, have fun. It's a side income as opposed to major league profits. And this whole thing we got going on here, it's a multi-million dollar opportunity. So I teach it because I can make more money teaching it rather than actually doing it. Of course, right? Wouldn't you do the same thing? And I put in my time, right? I've done this for 10 years, all day, every day. So I would think I'm qualified to do it. But it's interesting that people think that people are doing something wrong just because they're selling something. Like, there's nothing wrong with selling things. Like, were you pissed off when Apple sold you an iPhone? Of course not, right? Because the iPhone's worth way more than you paid. So that's my spiel to end this. But hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Opt into our email list. We send out an email once a week where you could write a question to me and I answer it here. Hopefully you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.